What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pizza Buffet live here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network, powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I am Rob Pizzola. I'm here with you for the next hour, breaking down today's NFL games, main market sides, main market totals. If the last couple weeks of results have not shown you anything, I don't have an edge at this time. It's very likely that anyone watching has an edge at this time. What do I mean by that? Single click right now, if I wanted to bet a side at Pinnacle, $100K, I can get down on a single game. Ask yourself why sportsbooks right now are very comfortable taking large amounts of money on games. It's because they are very comfortable with the numbers that they have in place in the market right now. So if I can implore you to do one thing, watch this each week if you find value in it, if you want a final breakdown of games. But I would implore you to bet earlier in the week. We have tons of content here on Forward Progress, including Sunday nights. Tonight, myself, Clive Bixby, 8 p.m. Eastern time, where we look ahead to the following week's games and get some really good early numbers. Midweek, best bets, some great early numbers. Suma, for example, with the -2 on Washington. Myself with the Eagles, which is now out to -3. So this is not to pat ourselves on the back for closing line value earlier. It's just being honest and real with you. If you watch any other content on Sunday morning, people are, 10-unit plays and whatever. This is not the thing to do on Sundays. Please play responsibly. Over the course of the show, I am going to bring up an odd screen. And one of the reasons that I'm very proud to have Pinnacle as a sponsor for Pizza Buffet here on Forward Progress is that you'll often notice they have the best price in market on one side of the game, one side of the total. Line shopping is extremely important in your betting. I'd never consider betting without Pinnacle being one of my sportsbook accounts. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for the past 25 years, and use code HAMMER when signing up to Pinnacle, as it does help support the show, our entire team here. So please do that. You must be 19 plus, available in Ontario, not available in the US. And as always, please play responsibly. Cannot preach it enough. Cannot preach it enough. Good morning to all the nails out there. Appreciate it. Adam says, if you have not hit the like button, why are you here? That's a good question, Adam. Why are you even here? The first thing you do on the stream is not come in and hit the like button. What are we even doing here? Smash that like button down below. If you're not subscribed here on Forward Progress, make sure you do so as well. And if you want, I'd appreciate it if you share the content as well. If you enjoy this show, click that share button down below. Share it to your Twitter, your Instagram, whatever the hell you want to share it to. Just help more people find this content on Sunday mornings. Charles mentions, just take every under for the day and call it a show. So obviously last week, only 2 of the games on the board went over the total. This is not something that I think is repeatable for the whole year. One thing that you might have noticed this week is the totals are a little bit lower. The market tends to adjust to this over time. Market tends to adjust to this over time. So don't just go blindly bet every under this week because all the unders cashed last week. If anything, sometimes there's an overcorrection, but these totals are very low. There has been an adjustment week on week. So yes, we're seeing lower scoring. The reason we're seeing lower scoring is the red zone offenses have been terrible. Red zone efficiency is terrible this season. It's the worst it's been in a couple of decades. On top of that, we're not seeing as many explosive plays in the NFL because we're seeing teams play more too high looks. Will that change over time? No, probably not. Teams are probably going to play that style of defense over the course of the year. But what is changing is the market. You're not betting the same prices as you were a week ago. Anthony, I think you're really concerned about the sound syncing up with the video. There's really nothing we can do here on our end. There's like a little bit of a delay with the HD stream. It should correct over time. It should correct over time. Anyways, most of the time, we're going to have betstamp up on screen anyways, and we're going to bring that in right now so that we can go through today's board. Give you a look at betstamp up on screen here. As always, easiest way to improve as a sports bettor, use multiple sports books, get the best odds. I highly recommend using an odds comparison tool. I would highly recommend Betstamp. Betstamp compares odds across every sports book for games, futures, player props. Save time, save money. Download Betstamp before you bet. Android, iOS, or check out the site betstamp.app. Okay. Let's get to it. Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pull this screen over here. Lines are 2.5 minus 111, favored towards Tampa Bay, shaded towards Tampa Bay, total 37.5 range at the moment. I might just get this off the screen completely at this point so that we can move a little bit faster. And we'll just move faster through this. So this game, I don't have a strong opinion on one way or another. I'll give my leans one way, as I do all the time, but very strong lean towards the Atlanta Falcons in this game, just not at a price where I'd be willing to pull the trigger. So current market price, I think, is fine. You have clean bill of health for both teams on the injury report, nothing crazy. But Bucs early downs are a real problem. Via True Media, who I think puts out some good stats on a weekly basis, the Bucs entered this week ranked 9th in NFL average distance to go on third down this season. One of the reasons why they do that is because they're running pretty heavily on first and second down. Even when they're throwing on first or second down, they're just not generating a lot of success. They're the second worst offense in the entire NFL on early downs. So at this point, what ends up happening is you have to basically rely on Baker Mayfield. You're just reliant on Baker Mayfield now to convert third downs for you regularly. And listen, Baker's had like a bit of a resurgence this year. He's been better, but generally speaking, I don't know that you want that a whole lot. Atlanta's defense has been solid this year, 5th success rate. They're more of a league average EPA team, but I don't see the Bucs moving the ball that consistently. One thing to note is Desmond Ridder's home road splits. It's been a problem. Very small sample. Does it mean anything? I don't know. But outside of the dome in his career, he has 10 points per game. He's been really bad. Success rate below 38%. EPA per play would be in the level of historically bad away from home. Will that correct over time? It might. They're throwing a lot more with Ridder. It's back-to-back 300-yard passing games. There's been some turnovers in there, but in particular over the last couple weeks, he's been pressured at the 3rd lowest rate in the entire league. That's a massive difference from weeks 1 to 4 in the year where he was pressured at a very high rate. And the thing with Tampa Bay is that they're not a good pressure team. 3rd highest blitz rate in the league, 12th worst pressure rate in the league. So they're sending extra men. They're not getting home in a lot of these cases. Atlanta wants to run the ball. We know that. Tampa Bay's rush defense, if you look at EPA, they're 3rd in the league. But that's very misleading due to turnovers. Their success rate's actually below average. Atlanta runs a lot of outside zone, inside zone. They actually even run some man duo concepts as well. Tampa Bay is allowing greater than 40% success rate on every single one of those running concepts. So personally, lean Atlanta. For those of you who play teasers, I think this is a very good spot to play a teaser. I don't see a lot of scenarios where the Bucs are blowing teams out. Even thinking back to earlier in the year, week 2, when they played Chicago at home, took a defensive touchdown for them to end up covering that game and winning that by 10 points. So Atlanta and teasers, no opinion anywhere else in the game. Game number 2, just for the purposes of making sure that the video synced up and going well, guys, I'm just going to give out the market instead of pulling up the screen just to make it a little easier. Once again, if you do want to follow the picks in real time, at Rob Pizzola on betstamp, although I don't know why you would do that. I would highly advise against it. All right, Raiders and Bears. Raiders 2.5 minus 113 at Pinnacle. Total 38.5. Really tough game to handicap because you have your double backup situation. Jimmy Garoppolo's out. He'll be back next week. Justin Fields out. He's expected to miss multiple weeks. The Bears have a low-key, pretty bad injury report that's kind of flying under the radar again. Nate Davis is out on the offensive line. Their right tackle, Darnell Wright, he did get a full practice in on Friday, but he's dealing with a shoulder injury. I have not seen confirmation on whether or not he's going to play. Still have injuries at running back. In the secondary, Eddie Jackson re-aggravated his foot injury. Terrell Smith is out as well at corner with an illness. So that's a problem. Raiders missing a couple corners, Nate Hobbs and Jacorian Bennett as well. So there's a lot to unpack here. We can start with Tyson Bagent, whatever the hell you want to call him. I don't know what his actual name goes by, and everyone has been going nuts with his name over the course of the week. Feels like Bagent is the right way. Bagent. I don't know. I don't know how to quantify him, generally speaking. I watched a tape of him last week. I heard Sharp Clark talk about him a little bit. There were times where he looked good, but they're trailing in the game for the vast majority of the game. He was in comeback mode against a team playing pretty soft defense. So hard to make anything out of him. The Raiders' defensive style is very interesting. They've really been able to limit opponent points this year, which if you look at the Raiders' defense on paper, you ask an average NFL fan to name more than 1.5 players on their defense, you're probably going to get a lot of unders on that because it's Max Crosby and a lot of nobodies. But what the Raiders' defense has done well is eliminate the big play this year. They've given up 5 total explosive plays in the last couple of weeks. An explosive play classified as 16-yard completion or more, 12-yard rush or more. That's the fewest in the league over 2 weeks. And generally speaking this year, they forced opponents to average almost 12 plays on touchdown drives. That's second most in the NFL. So they are playing this style of defense where they keep everything in front, make quarterbacks beat them. And maybe Bagent can do that, like dink and dunk, but I don't know enough about him yet to be able to say that he can consistently get down the field. You got Brian Hoyer going for the Raiders. They just don't score regularly to the Raiders. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. They still haven't scored more than 19 offensive points in any game this season. Makes it really challenging to lay it with them. I think this number is fine. For pool purposes, I'd probably play Chicago just because there's like an unknown quantity for both teams. I'm still not really high on the Raiders where I'm going to be picking them consistently to win when they can't score or cover spreads when they can't score. But that's pretty much it. Josh, what's the weather in Chicago? I'll go over the weather for games where I think it's going to have an impact. This one, in my opinion, good to go. Slight wind. You're going to get that in Chicago, generally speaking, this time of the year. But it's nothing crazy, nothing where it should have a tangible impact on the game, in my opinion. Chat's really going off with the amount of props and stuff that they're playing over the course of these games. You can always get in on the chat here on Forward Progress. If you're subscribed to the channel for 5 minutes, the chat opens up and you can get in there, ask me questions, do whatever the hell you want to do over the course of the day. All right, let's keep it going. Cleveland and Indianapolis. Market here is out to 3.5. Prices on Indy are plus 3.5 in like the minus 115 to minus 120 range. Total 40.5. This is going to be the first game that I lock in a play for. And at plus 3.5 minus 116 at Pinnacle, I'm going to play Indianapolis for a full unit. I'm well aware of how good the Browns defense is. In fact, it's unreal. There's so many incredible defensive numbers that they've posted so far this year. It's not even worth talking about any more than that. There's an injury on the Colts offensive line at right tackle. Braden Smith is out. That's a problem. Blake Freeland is a rookie. He started and has played in place of Braden Smith at right tackle at times this year. Hasn't been very good. That's an issue against the Browns defense. That's stuff that the market already knows, though. This is not a surprise or anything that's coming out of nowhere. Where do I find an edge on Indianapolis in this game? I'm a big believer in styles making fights. I'll get to that in like a number of the games that we talk about today or that I go through today. But Gardner Minshew's splits, I think, have some possibility of him being able to move the ball on this Browns defense. It sounds insane because he was terrible against the Jags last week. But if you look at the way the Jags play defense, their style of play really works against Minshew in a lot of cases. I should have been more in tune with that last week. But the big thing is that Cleveland plays the most man coverage of any team in the league by a mile. 8% more than any other team. That's a lot for man coverage. They're pretty much a 50-50 man zone team, which is highly unusual. This league has become zone at this point. Gardner Minshew this season against zone defenses, negative 0.14 EPA per play. Against man, 0.22 EPA per play. If we actually go back through his career, the splits very similarly align. When Cleveland plays zone, they play a lot of cover one, right? There's some man schemes with a safety over the middle of the field. That's the defense that Minshew has performed the best against this year. If you actually look at Minshew's numbers, he's top 10 in the league. Quarterback, basically, if he was only playing cover one. Last week, the Colts got out of the run game really early. They were trailing Jacksonville a lot. They had to throw the ball a ton. That is not a recipe for success for Indianapolis. But the Colts run a lot of these man blocking schemes, basically, or duo, where they get to the second level. And that's been the weakness of the Cleveland run defense this year. So the way that Indy runs their offense, in my opinion, is the most conducive to beating Cleveland. Now, that's not to say that Cleveland is going to give up 35 points to Indy. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I do think that this is being undervalued in the market. Yes, Deshaun Watson is back. Typically speaking, quarterbacks returning in the first game from injuries do not perform at 100% level. I'm not saying it's because of injury. It could be rust. It could be a number of things. But we've seen over the past decade or so, quarterbacks that are returning from an injury typically have a worse first game. This is a scary one, Hunter. Indy team total over. It is. But I don't hate it. I actually think that there's an actual edge there in market. A little bit scary. Overall, I can't get to this side of 3. My number is in like the 2.75-ish range. Just don't think the Browns offense is good enough to consistently go out on the road, win by margin. Yes, the defense can do it, but that's where I'm at. Okay, on to the next game. Detroit and Baltimore. Again, typically speaking, everyone, I do tend to pull the odds up on screen. I'll try to do that wherever possible. For some reason or another today, the odds are giving us a little bit of lag and hitting and ruining the sync between the video and the audio. So I'm just going to refrain from doing that going forwards, and I'll try to give out the market best I can. Detroit on the road at Baltimore. We've seen some sports books move off 3, but you'd have to pay like a really heavily juiced 2.5 with Baltimore. Most of the market is at 3. Pinnacle's got some very good numbers due to the low juice on this game on both sides. Total got bet down in the week to 42. has since taken over money. Part of that is that the weather is not that bad. You will have sustained winds of like 15 miles an hour. I'm not suggesting it's not going to impact the game. It will. You're going to get wind gusts up to 30 miles an hour, but it's nothing insane. Not one of those games where you just can't move the ball through the air. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to play Baltimore -3, -103 at Pinnacle for $85. That's my Kelly staking on the game. Ravens for $85. I'd go as high as -3, -110, but just reduce your bet size accordingly. Okay, wind. It is a factor. We have to talk about it at least a little bit. Goff in the wind. Came into the league. Not the greatest arm velocity or arm strength. It's a factor. Is it huge? No. I think some people will overplay that today for this game in particular. But Goff in general has some tendencies that I think do not work well against this Ravens defense. For one, if you look at Jared Goff this year, he's killed zone defenses, specifically teams that play cover 3. You play cover 3 against the Lions, Goff has a 0.51 EPA per play. That's like Hall of Fame level. Baltimore doesn't play cover 3. The third lowest rate of cover 3 in the entire league. So if you look at Goff versus different defenses, this one's going to stand out as by far better than everything, and the Ravens just don't do that. Now you have these beat-up running backs. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's returning from the hammy, who's just hasn't excelled as a runner yet in this league. And you have a Ravens run defense that has been very good for like a full year now, ever since they got Roquan Smith last year from the Bears. Detroit runs a lot of different running concepts on offense, but they're mostly an inside zone running team. And Baltimore's defense allows only 34% success rate on inside zone runs. I don't love the matchup for Detroit's offense. On the other side of things, look at the Lamar matchup. Lamar this year has been bad when blitzed. When not blitzed, now listen, everyone is kind of worse when they're blitzed versus not blitzed, but it's relative. The drop-off for Lamar relative to some other quarterbacks is more drastic. The Lions don't blitz. They blitz 20% of the time. That's the third lowest in the league. That's one thing working for Baltimore. With the wins being what they are and potentially affecting some downfield throws, I'd much rather have the mobile quarterback who can scramble on third down, use his legs to pick up yardage. Detroit has been bad against mobile quarterbacks. Mahomes week 1, 6 rushes, 45 yards. The only reason the Chiefs lost that game is because they dropped 1 million passes in that game. Geno Smith week 2 picked up some third downs with his legs. Go back to last year when the Lions played Josh Allen. He had a huge game. Justin Fields had 2 games against Detroit last year. He had 132 yards rushing or more in both of those games. That's an advantage. Second thing, Mark Andrews. Big advantage in a game like this. Having a great tight end. Not saying the Lions don't have one, but Detroit's way more susceptible to tight ends than the Ravens are. Tight ends have been targeted at the 4th highest rate in the league against the Detroit Lions. Almost 9 targets per game, 6.5 receptions per game, 63 yards per game. I like the Lions. I think they're a very good football team. I think they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Good offensive line, great coaching. I just put a lot of stock into stylistic matchups in the NFL. It's the way I've always handicapped it. It's the way that I found success. And in this one, I really like the matchup for the Baltimore Ravens. From a pure power ratings perspective, I wouldn't bet Baltimore -3. When you add in the situation, weather, how I think these teams match up against one another, I like Baltimore in this game. Very divisive game, I will say. from what I've seen this week in the sharp betting community as well, with players. When I say players, I mean bettors being on both sides of this one. Buffalo and New England. New England just got popped in market, which is nice, to be honest with you. And the reason it was nice is because I was about to lock in New England as one of the plays on this morning's show. And it saves us from that. Market is down to pretty much 7.5 everywhere. Pinnacle just got popped plus 8.5, minus 120 for New England. Totals all over the place in this game, but mostly 41.5s. After it got down to 40 at one point, again, due to weather, this one ended up being bet up. All right. Trying to decipher New England's injury report this week or any week is, I honestly hate the Patriots specifically for their injury reports. I hate the Patriots for the injury reports. It's a disaster. Don't know who's going to play. I'm still looking through Twitter right now, trying to figure out all these limited practice guys this week. I'm just going to assume that in most cases they are. But that's an issue. Weather in New England, sustained winds, 10 to 15 miles an hour, gusts up to 25 miles an hour. Wind helps New England. The windier the game, the more it helps New England. That's not to say Josh Allen can't throw through wind. He can. We've seen him do that before. But Josh Allen's dealing with an AC joint injury in his shoulder. It's causing him to be more hesitant, especially in the running game. I guess the risk of getting hit, I don't know if it's a conscious decision by the team, but if you look at his amount of scrambles when he's gotten out of the pocket this year, they're way down relative to his career numbers. Don't know what it is, but it's a different style of offense. If this turns more into a slugfest, it favors the Patriots a little bit more. They're good at stopping the run. Their run defense has the second best success rate in the league. They've faced a lot of great rushing offenses as well. Condensed game, low total, underdogs more appealing. Thank God someone bet it already. Don't have to lock it in. Don't have to deal with Mac Jones again and that safety from a week ago. But it's a disaster. Surprise Pingu says Belichick doesn't care about anyone. It's true. He's been doing this stuff for years with the injury reports. People in the chat have PTSD from last week with Mac Jones. I totally get it. Unlikely because of the move we saw this morning that this one will come back into range, but I'll check again before the show is done. As a reminder to everyone out there, if you haven't smashed that like button down below, there's 430 of you watching right now. Take 2 seconds, hit the like button down below. A lot of effort goes into the work we put in here at the Hammer and here at Forward Progress. If we could help help other people find the content, it goes a long way for us. So take 2 seconds, hammer that like button down below. We're at 131, 25% of the stream. Well, a little bit more than that. My math is not the greatest off the top of my head. Let's get that up if we can and hit that subscribe button down below. Next game on the list is our there's only 6 1 o'clock games today. 6 early games. 6 teams on bye week makes sense. Washington and the New York Giants. Suma gave out Washington as his best bet on Wednesday, the best bet show with myself, Suma, Eager, and Hitman. That was at -2. It's since been bet out to -3. The reasoning for the bet out to -3 is the disaster of a New York Giants injury report. Daniel Jones not expected to start today, probably Tyrod Taylor again, but it's the offensive line. We're talking unprecedented offensive line injuries for the Giants. Absurd amount of injuries. Andrew Thomas out again. That's obviously the big one, but everywhere else we got backup. Shane Lemieux's on IR. John Michael Schmitz, their center's out again. Matt Pert, who's a backup tackle, is out again. Evan Neal was limited in practice on Friday with an ankle injury. Someone else I'm missing at tackle got IR'd last week, got carted off. It's a disaster on this O-line. It is a wind game. Probably the worst weather of any of the games today. Marginally worse. 15 to 20 mile an hour sustained winds, gusts up to 30. Now, I think this line has been bet into place. Personally, this is where it has to be, in my opinion. 3. If it comes off 3 and we get late Giants money, go ahead and add Washington. I'm laughing at the German comment, which is an inside joke that we have running. But it's just so challenging for the Giants to move the ball with this O-line. It's extremely challenging. If this is a running game with bad weather, I think it favors Washington in 2 ways. 1, they're probably going to win at the line of scrimmages. Their defensive line against the Giants O-line is one of the biggest mismatches on the board this week. But 2, Washington's defense, where they've been exposed this year, is deep in the passing game. Big time explosive plays. And that's just not in the Giants' arsenal. The O-line can't hold up for these big explosive plays. They played a bad Miami defense a couple weeks ago. They only got 9 points on offense. They played Buffalo off of the London trip. Buffalo, missing a bunch of key players on defense. 9 points, no touchdowns. They haven't scored an offensive touchdown since week 4, the Giants. And everyone's like, Tyrod Taylor, upgrade over Daniel Jones. Tyrod Taylor, the Giants' offense last week was 4.3 yards per play, negative 0.12 EPA per play. This happened with them going 10 of 19 on third down. The likelihood that the Giants are going to be able to replicate this third down success on a weekly basis is low. I don't think the Giants are going to be able to move the ball effectively. The Giants' defensive tendencies, second highest man coverage team in the entire league. Sam Howell this year, of 35 qualified quarterbacks in the league, from an EPA perspective, he's 31st out of 35 against zone. He's 5th out of 35 against man. The Washington Commanders have good receivers that can win on the outside. McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, these guys can win against the Giants secondary. This has been how Howell has had success this year. Sam Howell, worst EPA per play in the entire league against cover 3 defenses. Giants play that at the 7th lowest rate in the entire league. There's just too much in terms of a lopsided advantage here for me to come back on the Giants. At this point, I don't know that you want to have a bet in your account where you need Washington to win by 4 on the road. I certainly don't want that. If I had to play something, it would be Washington. But you got to wait for it to come back. Okay, we'll go on to the late games. One game that took a lot of money, maybe about half an hour before I came on air today, was the Seattle Seahawks getting bet, which I found to be a little bit surprising. Not because I don't think the Seahawks can blow out Arizona. In fact, I do think that they can blow out Arizona. I was really hoping to have a bet on the Seahawks this week, but the line was hovering in the 7.5 range, got hit up to 8, 8.5, out to 10, minus 10 plus 102 at Pinnacle. Rest of the market at 9.5. If you like Arizona, Pinnacle's the best price in market by a mile. Total's been bet down to 44. The reason I'm surprised is because the Seattle injury report is not good. Now, we don't have confirmation on certain people yet and whether or not they're going to be in or out. But the offensive line for Seattle is low-key beat up and not really going noticed. Maybe because it's just Arizona that they're playing. But the right tackle, Abraham Lucas, is still on IR. His backup, Jay Curran, went limited practice on Friday dealing with an ankle injury. They do get Damian Lewis back at guard, which is nice. But Evan Brown, Phil Haynes, both of these guys were 2 times DNPs this week as well at center and right guard. it could be a lot of shuffling on the offensive line. Then you have DK Metcalf with the hip injury. And honestly, the way that they're talking about Metcalf, it does seem like he has more potential to miss this game altogether than to play it. So the timing of the bet was a little bit weird to me, unless somebody maybe had information that Metcalf was going to play, or maybe they just honestly don't care about the injuries. But with Budda Baker back for Arizona, I'm at the point now where it's just like in no man's land and there's nothing to do. I wanted Seattle. They had a misleading loss last week. They scored 1 touchdown on 4 goal-to-go drives last week against the Bengals. That's just not going to be repeatable. It's not. They struggled in the red zone. They had an INT in the red zone. They had a turnover on downs in the red zone. Just a very, very misleading loss against the Bengals. They're a very good early down offense. They can run the ball well with Kenneth Walker. That, as Clevetier also always points out, is very predictive going forwards. Second ranked offense in early down success rate against the Arizona defense, which is dead last in early down success rate on defense. Cardinals are coming down to earth now. Since James Conner went down a couple weeks ago against Cincinnati, they've scored 15 points, 1 touchdown in almost 7 quarters of play. More and more tape on this offense. It's just getting harder and harder for them to get open. The Seattle defense is really up to par right now. They got their corners back. Last couple road games, Cincy and the Giants, they've held opponents to 3.6 yards per play combined. Kind of in no man's land here. So GK says Seattle suck on third down, though. This is true. However, there's a lot more predictiveness from early downs than there is third downs. These tend to balance out over time, or at least the better teams tend to figure out third downs over time. So if you're looking at a team that is very bad on first and second down, but good on third down, that's more of a warning sign, like the Tampa Bay Bucks as an example, than it is the other way. It's more likely to get corrected the other way around. Nothing else to do here. Pittsburgh and the LA Rams. Kind of was like at a -3, -120 for most of the week. Some spots out to 3.5 here on the Rams. Pinnacle shaded heavily towards the Steelers at +3.5, -117. Total 43.5. I find this to be an incredibly challenging game to handicap. One of the reasons why is the Steelers went into the year with much higher preseason expectations than the Rams, but they've sucked. If you were to just use this season alone and model the game as if like priors don't matter, you would almost certainly have an edge on the Rams this game. But you get the Steelers off the bye week. James Daniels, Dan Moore return on the offensive line. James Daniels probably more important. Dan Moore, not the greatest tackle, if we're being real. Deontay Johnson back, which is huge for them. Get Allen Robinson out of that number 2 receiver role where he's useless. Now, Pat Freiermuth re-aggravated his hamstring injury. He's out again, but it's much healthier for Pittsburgh on offense. The Steelers have talked about, especially Mike Tomlin after the loss to Houston a few weeks ago, that they want to change a lot of their offense. They haven't had time to do that. The bye week serves a perfect opportunity. So we're going to see today the new look Steelers offense. It might still suck. It could. But remember, they have played San Fran, Cleveland, and Baltimore this year. The likelihood that their offense is suppressed is high. Suma says, Mike Tomlin voodoo is greater than the bye week, which is true. But actually, I did go back and look at the Steelers off of a bye week under Mike Tomlin. They're 12-4 in the last 16 games, which also means they're 12-5 in the last 17 games. They've won each of the last 6 games off a bye week. It's the third longest active streak in the NFL. They fared very well in this spot. So you got the Tomlin voodoo situation, which is like whenever they're an underdog, they somehow keep the game close. Very well off bye weeks. New look Steelers offense. I don't really know how to handicap this a whole lot. I don't have a strong degree of confidence in the number I have on this game. I am a believer in the Rams, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They throw over the middle of the field a lot. The Steelers defense has not been able to cover that this year for the most part. But I think we learned something one way or another about the Steelers today. And I'm not going to overreact to it if the offense looks great or looks good or whatever. But if we do not get a decent Steelers offensive performance today against the Rams defense, I think we can just write that off. So we'll see. Next game, we're into the 425 region. Chargers and Chiefs. Chiefs catching a little bit of money today at the sharp books. -6. Total 48, which has been bet down quite a bit in the Chargers and Chiefs. Of note is the status of Derwin James. I have not seen if anyone knows whether or not he's been ruled out or not. I just see Adam Schefter talking about Derwin James right now. They may not have Derwin James, who bruised his foot. Pretty impactful, because Derwin James is the guy that's going to cover Travis Kelce. And without Derwin James, that's probably going to be a problem. Now, I understand the appeal in the Chargers. Even from my, ignoring the number I make the game, subjectively in my head, it just feels like you want the Chargers in this game. Justin Herbert, very good matchups against the Chiefs in his career. They almost won at KC on the road last year, week 2, but he got hurt at the end of that game. In the second game, they had a bunch of injuries, still ended up being a close game. There's something going on with Herbert in passing down the field this year. He has the most overthrown incompletions in the NFL this season at 16. 10 of those were targets that were 20 or more yards downfield. That's also the most in the NFL. He's struggling deep. And there's something that just does not seem right about the Chargers offense. Now, maybe with Austin Eckler working back in after another week, that changes a little bit. But the Mike Williams injury, in my opinion, is big. Quentin Johnston last week just didn't get involved in the game. And this Kansas City defense is way better. Herbert's not faced a Kansas City defense that has been this good. It's way better than last year. They're second in EPA on defense, third in pressure rate. They'll be able to get after Herbert like the Cowboys did last week. The spot is also terrible. Whale capper Drew Dinsick calls this the Widowmaker spot. Mickey Hill points it out in the chat as well. 5 days rest versus 9 days rest. Short rest, Monday Night Football versus a team on extra rest. We all know the Andy bye with that extra rest stuff, but this is historically a very challenging spot. The Chargers have faced 2 good passing offenses this year. Miami and Minnesota. If you look at Tua's numbers and Kirk Cousins' numbers in those games, they're astronomical. They threw a lot in those games. They had a lot of success throwing the ball. This secondary without Derwin James, if he doesn't play, is a real problem. Big problem. I get the KC move, and GK points out that this spot is 2-16 ATS for the short rested team. I just can't. I'm not going to do it with the Chargers. I'm not. In fact, I was almost close to coming on here when we started the stream and potentially giving out the Chiefs. There's just so much working against LA. Now, would it surprise me at all if they kept it close or even won? No, nothing in the NFL surprises me. Nothing in the NFL surprises me. But just not a game I'm going to want to have interest in. Green Bay and Denver. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I never really contemplated this much this week. Green Bay has an injury report that kind of mirrors New England's, where you got a lot of, who knows? Aaron Jones is expected back in, which is big for them. But Elton Jenkins on the offensive line didn't practice Friday with a knee injury. Quay Walker, we don't know. Jair Alexander's back flared up, missed practice on Friday. They also have other injuries in the secondary, guys that are questionable, Darnell Savage, Eric Stokes. Tough to handicap. Denver hasn't covered a game yet this season. They've caught money in a lot of games this season, for the most part. I don't really understand the infatuation with Denver from the sharps or sharp, like big time bettors, let's say, because there's obviously some sharps that will bet against Denver as well. But they've caught money in the market. So the market trending towards them. Green Bay's pass defense matches up well with Denver because Green Bay's a cover 3 team. Russell Wilson is not good against cover 3. There's actually only one defense that Russell Wilson has been good at against this year. He's been very good against cover 2 defenses. Green Bay plays cover 2 3% of the time. Very, very, very small amount. Who's dead last against blitzes in the entire league this year? Russell Wilson. Negative 0.5 EPA per play. Terrible. Green Bay blitzes at the 6th highest rate in the entire league. Part of that is he's getting a lot of balls knocked down at the line of scrimmage or getting tipped, and they're resulting in interceptions. It's happening very frequently. Where Denver might have success, they run a lot of inside zone running schemes. Green Bay's defense allows a 46% success rate against inside zone. They're not great at covering that. So maybe you get Denver able to move the ball on the ground, but it's not necessarily a great matchup for them. Although if Jair Alexander is out, that will make a big difference. On the other side, can Denver's defense get pressure? Because Jordan Love has a negative 0.5 EPA against pressure. He's got a positive 0.15 EPA when he's not pressured. Right now, Denver's the second worst pressure rate team in the entire league. But they're getting healthier. Baron Browning's back. DJ Jones is back. They played better defensively against Kansas City last week. Can that continue going forwards? I don't know. Where's Denver's forward-looking defense, let's say? It's not historically bad. It's not the worst in the league. But are they going to be a team that all of a sudden is able to generate pressure? I don't know. Green Bay on offense. They also run a lot of inside zone. They do it well. Denver's defense is also very good at defending the inside zone runs. 36% success rate. So Jordan Love might be called on to do more in this game again. Not really a proposition that I want. Somewhat interested in Denver. I think the number is fine, relatively speaking. Pool plays, I'd take the Broncos. But it's an ugly game altogether, in my opinion. Under money in the last hour or so here as well. Should point out. Okay, final game. Dolphins and Eagles. So we got a Joey Toons release on the Dolphins prior to the stream. And I'm going to play back the other way on this one. -3 plus 102. It's not a super big play, but it's just a standard play. 100 to win 102. -3 plus 102 at Pinnacle. It's moved in real time. So I got to go -3 plus 103. But we're going to get a verified bet in here and track that. Okay. I talked about this game a lot this week. It's the first time watching me talk about this game. I'll break it down. Wind, somewhat of an issue, but nothing crazy. Injury reports turned out way better for both teams than anticipated. We have to monitor Connor Williams on the Miami offensive line. If he's out, this would be an even bigger play. But Xavier Howard, who left last week's game with a groin injury, is expected to play. Right tackle Lane Johnson for the Eagles is playing. Jalen Carter's returning from his ankle injury. It's basically Bradley Roby and Reed Blankenship out on the Eagles defense. I'm going to use the same line that I used on my best bets show on Wednesday. For those of you who watch the Forward Progress best bets and know that I gave out the Eagles -2.5. I don't want to oversimplify this, but I will a little bit because there's some value in it. Styles make fights, right? Miami's wins: Chargers, Patriots, Broncos, Giants, Panthers. All 5 teams below average pressure rates in the league. One loss this year for the Dolphins, where they look terrible. The Bills, number 1 pressure rate team in the league. Philly's not far off at number 4. What the Bills can do and what the Eagles can do is rush for and get pressure, especially with the return of Jalen Carter here. I don't think Miami's offense is going to get shut down. I don't think that's what's going to happen here. But I think there's going to get some stops. There's going to be some stops. Last week, the Eagles, an anomaly. They committed 4 turnovers last week against the Jets. That's almost as many as they have in the first 5 games of the season. Jets scored 11 points off those turnovers and a go-ahead touchdown. This is not the defense. This is not the Jets' defense. It's a very different story for Miami. They've struggled all year. Success rate, EPA per play, stopping the run, stopping the pass. It's not a good defense. 2/3 of the time when an opponent reaches the red zone against Miami, they score a touchdown. It's the 26th best red zone defense in the league. That's important here because that's where the Eagles have struggled this year, is punching it into the end zone when they're in the red zone. Last year, 68%. 2 years ago, 63%. This year, 45%. I think Philly's going to score touchdowns in this game. Vic Fangio for the Dolphins wants to limit the explosive plays. That's fine. Philly's a team to me that can move the ball up and down the field pretty easily, short yardage at a time. I think highly of Miami. I'd love to back them when they play bad teams, but this is a different story now. And there's one unit in this game that is extremely weak, and it's the Miami defense. I like the Eagles tonight, -3, +102. -103, as I had to lock in as it moved on screen. Okay, so 3 plays that I've locked in. Indy +3.5 for a full unit. Baltimore -3, -103. That's been bet out a bit, and it looks like a bad inactives list for Detroit as well. Charles Harris is out for them, which makes a difference. That was unexpected, and there was a little bit of movement towards them. Jerry Jacobs, who got added to the injury report on Saturday with a knee injury, is out as well. So both of those make a pretty substantial difference in the game. For those of you who watch the Monday Night Football streams on Hammer HQ, I got to have a dental surgery tomorrow. There's not going to be a stream this week. I'm going to be a trooper and be back on Thursday night and try to get through it, but no Monday Night Football stream for the Vikings and the 49ers. I'll give a quick breakdown of the game, but I have no bets on it. Don't have an edge on it right now. I'm assuming Christian McCaffrey is going to play. Seems like a good spot for the 49ers to bounce back offensively, even without Deebo Samuel, even without Trent Williams. Minnesota's a cover 2 team. Brock Purdy's been very good against cover 2 this year. Minnesota's a high blitz rate team. Brock Purdy's been solid against the blitz this year. They can scheme something there. It's not the weather that they got in Cleveland last week, either. But it's a matter of whether the Vikings can kind of score. Now, when the Vikings played at home to the Chiefs, they closed like 4-point underdog in that game. Now, something's changed since then. There's no Justin Jefferson. Offense is going to be worse without him. But we're in like the 6.5 range. So, not a strong opinion, one way or another. Not a strong opinion one way or another. You could let Kanish do the Monday night. I would not let him sewer our NFL streams in any way. Would not let him sewer in any way. Yeah, so this is an interesting, like, love RP, but JT, so he's referring to Joey Tunes as sharper when it comes to the NFL. I do some stuff, like some crossing with Joey Tunes, whatever. Not going to say anything bad about him, whatever. The only thing is you're betting different numbers, right? Like, it's not, he's coming in on Miami +3 at a certain number. I'm betting a different number. There's always going to be disagreements, obviously, one way or another. But game day NFL, I have zero confidence in my game day NFL. Zero. Negative confidence. I preach this every single week. I appreciate everyone who watches. I'm just keeping it real with you people. I don't bet Sunday NFL. Very rarely, unless it's an injury-related item that was like something unknown to market, or I feel very confidently in something like the market was going to move one way and I have an edge on the other side and I'm waiting till last minute. That's it. If you got people telling you they're killing it on Sundays in the NFL, these people should have gold rocket cars and be living on private islands and doing whatever they want because the markets are huge. You could get down a ton of money on Sunday NFL. So I'm just being real with everybody. I'm back tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Me and Clive Bixby will preview week 8 in the NFL while the first half of the Dolphins and Eagles is going on. So, like, do you have confidence in the plays you locked in today? These are based off of my numbers, the same numbers I bet with over the course of the week. Most of the times on a Sunday, the plays that I'm going to lock in, are going to be for one of two reasons. One, I don't think the market has moved enough. So I bet something earlier in the week. I've talked about all these games, or at least the majority of them, earlier in the week, right? I bet something earlier in the week and I don't think it's moved enough. That's one reason. The second reason is there's been market resistance against one of my plays. That would indicate that someone or the market as a whole generally does not think much of my opinion on that game. So the quicker we understand why you're getting edges on Sunday, the less the less confident it feels. Let's put it that way. Do I trust my numbers? Yes. But also, you have sports books who've been taking bets all week long, who now have 100K limits. I'm sure they trust their numbers, and maybe a lot more because they don't have the, I'm betting into that sports book, but as are hundreds and hundreds of sharp bettors as well. So all of that matters. Nolan, appreciate you standing for us here on Forward Progress. Before I wrap it up here, if we could get everyone to like the stream, that would make a big deal for me going forwards. I do appreciate you, all the nails that are in here, everyone who has been a part of Forward Progress, the Pizza Buffet here this morning. A reminder, if you're in Ontario, check out Pinnacle Sportsbook. Use code HAMMER if you're going to sign up. It does help support the show. Just the 3 plays for me today. Just reviewing leans slightly to New England, slightly to Pittsburgh. That's about it. Total leans are Green Bay over and Chicago under. And guess what? You know what, people? Let's lock in a late play. This is the beauty of being on for an hour. We just got an Atlanta +3, -114. Last second number at Pinnacle. And that reached my threshold. Let's see if it stays up for long enough. I'll give it a second or so. I'll just say it out to everyone there. Atlanta's in range. Late pick. $50. Half unit. That is the absolute worst number I take. +3 -14. Popped up into range here for me as I was going through the final reveal of the board. I won't put it in But if you're out there, Atlanta +3 -114. Appreciate everyone. I'm really looking forward to today. I think there's some great games. I like that I have action on the best games of the day. Hopefully, we can get a winner today. Hopefully. It's been rough the last couple weeks on Sunday morning. It's great first 4 weeks of the year. It's been rough the last couple, but hopefully find some winners today. I'm back tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Clive Bixby. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. Enjoy your Sunday. Good luck with your bets. I'll catch everyone later on tonight, hopefully in a good mood after a winning day. This has been Forward Progress, or the Pizza Buffet on Forward Progress, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. Peace out, everyone.